What is going on, everybody? Yo and hello, Mike here, Danny Black from Sports Vault. We are Hobby Think Tank today. We're the Hobby Think Tank today. I would have let
Well,
Danny introduce us, but he would have screwed up the show name. So
I'm the hobby, not the thing. So
you're the hobby. I'm the think. Maybe I'm the tank part
I
of
was
it.
about to say, I don't know if we're going by size here, but
Right. I definitely qualify as a tank, but man, I tell you, this is going to be fun for us because I hope you guys really enjoy this. We're going to have a discussion today about protection because I did a video the other day on my baseball collector channel because I just renewed my collectibles insurance policy. And I thought it was a good thing to talk about. And I think there's so many ways to talk about this topic. We're going to try to do it as fast as we can for you guys. We're trying to keep this to 30 minutes. Forgive us. We don't know. Other things may come up in our discussion, but there's more than just having insurance on your collection, right, Danny? I mean, protection of your asset, of your all the money, all the hard-earned money we spend on this hobby. We have to do something to be smart, right?
so the way I look at it is from pack to card to safety, the whole process.
Okay.
And I think it starts with how are you buying your cards? And how do you protect that physical, actual piece of cardboard?
Yeah, that's a whole nother aspect of protection, right? And you know, I know longtime collector, we all have spent mountains of money on top loaders and binders and
I
you
mean, I
know,
have more penny sleeves than I have family.
right, lucite cases, screw downs. And Norman is wanting to come say hi. Come here. This is Hobby Think Tank, and you're not a thinker.
Right, Norman. I don't put
Smartest
in.
guy.
I don't put in charge of my vintage raw.
He is the smartest guy on the show right now. All right, go do whatever you do. Okay. Um, sorry, he would have just sat there whining, and
I,
it sounds like
I'm
our
the same
kids.
way.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. We spend so much doing that, and we need like. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. In fact, we should.
Right.
But every time I go buy supplies, I think, oh, that's another card I could buy. Honestly, and
Well,
I
let
still
me
do
ask
it.
you a question. As a vintage collector, do you keep cards raw? And if you do, how do you store them?
So if I have, that's a multifaceted answer.
And well, let me take a step back. I'm asking specifically for the size before they went standard and 57. So for the larger vintage or different vintage sizes.
So I bought large top loaders that are, and I have the larger penny sleeves that will accommodate those vintage cards. Standard size cards, obviously, I just have in regular top loaders. But I think if you don't pick the right top loader,
Yep.
you're really setting yourself up for a not favorable outcome because you're going to damage the card. And this is on like jersey cards, getting the right thickness on the points and all that stuff. You don't want it slipping around and flying around. Um,
And you don't want to scratch up or shove the card in so hard you do damage.
exactly. So I think knowing what you have, and I see all the time on blowout or whatever, like what size top loader do I need for this card? And they'll mention a certain card, and usually somebody knows, like, oh, you need a 130 point, or you need a this or that, and people are pretty helpful with that.
I'd say every local card shop I've ever gone to is more than happy. Usually, if you're breaking a pack in their store, to give you a sleeve and a top loader and give you the right size and
Yeah,
advise you. So that to me is the first step. I mean, that to me is just getting out of the box. What do we do?
right.
And then from there, now we have our card. Okay, and let's say it's a value because that's really what we're protecting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you a magnetic kind of guy? Are you a mag guy?
I like the magnetic case that holds the penny sleeve inside of it.
Okay.
That to me protects the surface of the card a little bit better. I don't like it raw against the plastic.
I think I am going to be on an island in this opinion. I abhor magnetics. Uh,
For what reason?
I don't know. I just maybe I'm old school. Um, I use single screws on cards like that. I,
You use screw downs?
just the single screws, but they're always, they're indented. They have the cutout for the card inside of it, just like a mag does. It's the difference between a mag and a single screw is what's holding the case together. Is it a magnetic force or is it a screw? That's it. Other than that, they're the exact same, really. So
So you like the screw down, you like the case, just not the magnet.
correct.
I will actually put a piece of Scotch tape around the magnet, so maybe I'm proving your point here.
Yeah,
For anything I'm transporting, but I like the ease of it more than a top loader.
fair enough. And
And
and I don't,
yeah,
again, I don't think that's wrong. Like, I'm not saying that's silly. I just don't. It doesn't fit me. I'm a top loader guy. I put a lot of stuff that probably shouldn't be in top loaders and top loaders, and I do have cards in mags, but only if they came that. Like, if I got it shipped to me in a mag, it's just going to stay in the mag. I'm not going to switch it out or anything. Um, so I do have cards in mags. So I don't see Norman, dude.
Norman doesn't like screw downs.
Daddy, he doesn't. He
No, Norman's a magnet guy.
he likes screwing. Um,
Well, that's the neighbor,
right, neighbor dog.
right? Neighbor dog. Yes, let me clarify.
Dude, you're killing me, man. Um, I'll just have to sit here while we talk about protection. We're protecting things.
Right. So, do you have a dollar value in which you get serious with your protection?
Oh man,
As much as I'd love to say I had every card perfectly, equally conserved, would not be truthful.
I do know people that they'll put it in a penny sleeve, a top loader, and then a team bag. The appropriate size team bag. Or I
Hmm.
use Superior Fit sleeves for a lot of stuff. I think they're great, mainly for slabs. To me, the best protection you can give a card is to put it in the slab. Honestly,
Well, that brings up the other question. You know, do you slab cards for protection? Not great, because I definitely do. Especially for my PC, I will prefer to have something slabbed, and I don't care about the grade at all.
yeah, but that's serving multiple purposes. And we've talked about why grade, and that's been at multiple episodes. Everybody talks about this, but protection is a key issue for me, just like it is for you. It is also easier down the road to get rid of that card. It becomes much more liquid, right, and more definable from a value
Yep.
standpoint versus, oh, it's raw and one person's opinion and another person's opinion, they're very different on the condition, and you end up, right, not being happy typically with the outcome.
Well, this is sounds like the BGS alt conversation is, how much is it worth once it's cracked? Once you go back to raw, everything goes up in the air. As long as something is in a slab, and the reason that's so important is because you can insure your cards.
Right.
And you said you've done videos on it. I've done videos on it, but insuring your collection is different than your typical household insurance.
Explain that. I think you're 100% right. Go into that.
Okay. So on a typical household insurance, you have it protects your items and your valuables, but there are typically very specific limits on that and very specific documentation that must be presented in advance of a claim, not post claim. So that means if you have a collection and that collection changes, you buy something new, you sell something, that paperwork constantly has to be updated, and those values need to be validated, for lack of a better term. And that's why, for me, the grading, and I think that's what you were referring to, allows you to kind of isolate that value for insurance. But the homeowner's policy is not going to give you the coverage of a specific collectibles policy. And that policy will go even further. It'll cover some travel. It'll cover more protection in shipping and in the mail. It will cover more theft and more other things that a typical homeowner's policy or even a rider doesn't always protect.
Yeah, and it's relative to the peace of mind it gives you. It's reasonably cheap. I'm not saying it's inexpensive. Mine's not inexpensive, but at the same time, knowing that I have some protection, you know, if something happens, it's a good feeling to know that that's taken care of to some degree. Is it perfect? No, nothing is, right? But it's something. I'm doing something.
Well, you're also handling cards that are not your own.
I am now, yeah.
and I've always been in that position. So protecting other people's cards really really keeps you on the straight and narrow.
No doubt. Yeah, no doubt. But, again, from literally pulling it in the pack or buying it, I think thinking through what's my process for protecting, storing, because then you get into the whole aspect of storage, right? And
Yep.
one guy brought up, and I'll talk about this real quick, and then we'll get into more of the storage thing. But one guy was like, "Well, why don't you just send them to the vault, and then they're safe? eBay vault, alt, PWCC vault, a vault, right? A
Yep.
collectibles vault. Well, to me, I have my cards to enjoy them, not to stick them in some dark hole
Yep.
in a foreign land, so to speak, where I can't get to them. That's just, to me, seems pointless.
I do keep a couple cards in a local safety deposit box.
Okay, that's very common for people to do that at the bank.
Because I can get them, just like you said. If I want to get
Right.
my cards, I need to drive, 12 minutes down the road.
A lot of people that I know have gun safes where
Yes.
they, have turned it into a card safe, basically. There you've got some degree of fire protection, you've got smoke protection, you've got, theft protection.
Can I give a little insight for those of you that may not understand the size or shape difference between a gun safe and a traditional floor safe? Is a lot of times you will have a lot more space in the safe and a lot more storage. And I've seen people that just can stack and stack and stack. I don't know how big your safes are, and we don't have to go into it. But finding the right size depth. I had a client that did not buy a deep enough safe, and none of his boxes would fit.
Right. And then you're like, oops. Yeah. I'm just going to give the combination to mine right now.
Right. I walked you right into that.
I might as well. No. Yeah. Look at, when you're looking, I definitely recommend a gun type safe, whether you keep guns in there or not. I happen to have guns and cards in mine, but it can be there's shelves in there and you can adjust the shelving. I mean, it's really convenient for storing collectibles. And again, we could be talking comic books, coins. I mean, all of this needs to be protected. If you have something that is of value, you want to protect it. Ideally, nothing happens. Well, do all the things you need to do, take the precautions you need to take to protect it in case nothing happens. And then you need to have the insurance to protect it if something happens, right? So it's just this, from, alpha to omega, right? You've got all these steps in between that each person needs to decide how far they're willing to go to protect this thing that we care about. I mean, I built a custom storage case, for crying out loud, to house my slabs. Now, that was honestly not as much for protection as it was just organization and keeping just things easy to get to, right? So
do you keep your slabs? And I wonder, because I've got a chip slab on an online purchase, and I've gotten a lot more cautious about making sure my slabs go into bags. And I didn't used to do that before, and now I think that should be almost standard practice. For the price of slabs and the price of reslabs almost never go on sale. So I was in a situation where I got a cracked slab, and I've been in a situation where one got cracked in the mail, and it was packed pretty well. So I think that's one of the things in the cycle of taking care of your cards. Now, whether it's a top loader, you mentioned the team bags, if it's a one touch or a screw down, all of these cases have plastic covers that prevent scratching, and even if it falls, a lot of times it'll prevent the case from opening or stuff from falling out. So I don't know about you, but I definitely I think we're about to.
No, I'm here.
Okay,
we're good.
I know. Say hi to Norman.
I'm telling you, man, it's the worst situation. Usually I can just say, leave me alone. But
so do you keep your slabs in bags in the Monster?
Every single
slab,
every single slab in the Beast, every slab I own, period, is in the appropriate sized superior fit sleeve. They used to be called perfect fit sleeves. and now several companies make those. I love it. I even then on my really higher end cards, I will put them in. They're done by Case Pro. They're like a little black,
Yes, I use those all the time.
clear front leather, pleather, whatever you want to call it. They're actually pretty slick. I bought some of those to have. Nowadays, you can buy. There's all kinds of companies that make these rigid cases to put your slabs inside of. Do you have any in front of you? No, probably not.
No, only because I'm on vacation,
Right.
working very hard as I do.
Yes.
One of the well, I want to give a couple rules for people to
Yeah.
think about because we're going through our typical patterns. But are you traveling with your cards? Do you go show to show, and you need a way to transport them? Because that's a whole nother aspect with the cases and, making sure those are protected properly. And then there's what if they're on display in your house on the wall or something like that? And now you're getting into, I think, really what you're talking about is all the additional protection that you can put on the cards now.
Yeah. Any way you can think about it, you can probably make that happen. I love seeing cards on people's walls and wall displays.
Yep.
I simply don't have any room for that. I've chosen to put basically baseball art all over my walls, all four walls here. But they're fantastic. Like I love the way they look. Always make sure you're getting one with UV glass. That's actually pretty standard now. And I use the term Pinzoni cases, although they're only one of the manufacturers. It's kind of like calling every soda pop a Coke, like what we do in Texas. Everything's a Coke. If you said, "Hey, what kind of Coke do you want?" Well, a Pepsi or what, you just call everything. Every carbonated drink is a Coke here, and it's then what kind. And so I just say a Pinzoni type case, and there's multiple kinds of sizes and whatever fits. Make sure it's secured well to the wall because it's heavy.
Yes.
All this stuff because you don't want it falling and breaking. That's just a pain in the butt. So I love seeing card rooms. I love seeing how people store things. I love watching that because I either try to go, man, I'm doing that too. That's a great reinforcement of what I'm doing, or I learn something new, an innovative way to think about how to store and protect our collections. And it's like, wow, that's great. I'm going to start doing that. For when we were kids, Danny, I had tons of binders as a kid, and I thought they were awesome.
I literally have one under my laptop. I love it.
Nice. Then we got to a point in the hobby where binders were kind of frowned upon for a decade or so. And now they're kind of making a resurgence. And I love having cards and binders. I mean, that's a pretty great way to look at cards. People worry about protecting them. There's these new things, the Z folios, right, that are basically zip up binders. Hold on, I'll grab one. I'll show you.
You know what? I got it right here.
What do you got? A Z folio?
A very hobby specific.
I can't get them down. They're all tied up. I have some binders that are only about 2 inches, inch and a half, but they're like photo binders where you close them up and they seal. They have a little clip on them.
So mine unzips all the way around.
Yep.
And then
it's actually back,
front and back clear, but also with a little bit of an extra lip to make make it easier to get the cards in and out.
Yeah. And I love this. That was the kind of negative towards binders for a while is getting them in the pages, you're going to damage them and yada, yada. Just be careful. Like a lot of people will put cards in penny sleeves, then put them in their binders. Okay, great. I've actually found, I'll show you. So there's, standard penny sleeves. These are BCW or whoever, or whatever. But there are also these that I love. Well, no, these are Ultra Pro, but make sure you get the right kind. You've got thick, for thicker cards, vintage cards, etc.
And they make them for tobacco cards.
Yes. Huge, important thing.
Yes. And they make one touches and screw downs for tobacco cards.
Smooth sleeves. If you've never seen these, this is a pack of 100. these have a lip on the penny sleeve, so that it makes it super easy to get the card in, and it's a
I
smooth
have
sailing.
seen them, but I never knew the name.
Yeah, they are pretty slick,
Much
actually.
they're much easier to use. Do they fit in a top loader, or does it
Yeah,
stick out?
no, absolutely. No, no,
That's
no. It
awesome.
fits perfect. It's just a little bit extra to allow you to get the card in easier without having to. It's just they're slick. I have to tell you. So I like those,
I
and I do,
also, I'm sorry.
no, no, it's okay. I do use the appropriate top loader for smaller cards. If need be. Uh, why wouldn't you? Right?
Well, Chrome typically also is a thicker uh,
Stock.
stock than not Chrome, and that's something is that people should be aware of. A lot of times, it puts you into a 35 point versus a 20 point. And then the other thing is, getting back to the insurance, any kind of insurance typically excludes the basement. So if your man cave or your card collection is in the basement, that is something to pay attention to.
Just because of it's more prone to
The
flooding.
flooding and
Yeah.
water pipe breaking, or whatever. In fact, you
Yeah,
guys had your first pipe burst this winter, so
we did.
I wonder how many basements.
Right. Well, we don't have a lot of basements in
Well,
Texas,
that's true. Yeah.
but I'm looking at my policy. Speaking of insurance, and you mentioned on shipping, right?
Hmm.
Um, so they break it down. If you just use a regular old first class or priority mail, it's only going to cover up to $200. Uh, and my policy has a $50 deductible. So class two, they'll cover you up to 2,500, and that's just like a flat coverage. It's not a percentage of your overall coverage, and that's if you do signature required and signature confirmation. And then it'll give you up to 10% of your deal if you do a registered mail, express mail, or if you use FedEx and stuff like that. So if you move to FedEx, you basically get 10%. So why wouldn't you use FedEx on everything? Right?
And if you use a carrier pigeon, you're pretty much not going to be covered.
Right. That's right.
I
So,
mean, it's common sense. The better you pack it, the more you secure it, the more safeguards you put in, the more they cover.
but you mentioned something earlier that made sense. That's true. I've had cards come to me very well protected that were still the slab was cracked, and you can totally tell it happened in shipping. Like it wasn't the guy took a sledgehammer to it before he shipped it to me,
Right.
and so that's frustrating. And what sucks about that is if you're the buyer, like I just wanted the card. I don't want to have to get my money back. I wouldn't have bought the card in the first place if I just wanted my money back. And so that's frustrating because now I have to go rebuy the card. If you're the seller, now you're out everything. You basically you lost. You don't even get the card back because it's most of the time they don't want it back because it's been damaged or whatever. And they now have to make a claim either with USPS on their insurance if they were smart enough to insure it. Good luck getting that. I mean, that's a major pain in the rear. I've
Well,
heard
that's
nothing.
one of the advantages to the insurance.
Yeah, this is way easier to
Yeah.
make a claim than going through the United States Postal Service. And it saves me a lot of money. I'm already paying for insurance. Why would I also pay to have the post office insure it on top of? And what's funny, I made that mistake recently. I was,
Yeah.
I was shipping stuff off and I was insuring it. And I was talking to Ty and he's like, don't you have collectibles insurance? I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, it covers your shipping. I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that. And I went to my policy to look at it. And sure enough, my dummy butt was spending double the money essentially or whatever, buying additional insurance that I didn't even need to do
And
what I was doing.
typically, your policy on a collectible policy will cover much higher amounts at much more reasonable rates.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's not on a per transaction basis, right? There's no limit on how many shipments I can make on
And
this.
you can go up to, depending on your policy, 25, 50, $100,000 without itemizing, and that's something that I think is huge.
Yeah, the no inventory thing is gigantic, and you kind of alluded to it earlier. But collectibles, the reason that a collectibles specific policy is so valuable is because they know that market, whether it's cards, comics, coins, whatever, that it's always fluid, right? You're always either adding or getting rid of inventory, and or values are changing all the time. And so they know it's fluid. And so itemizing everything would just be pointless, because the minute you did it and finished it, it would be different, right? The values will
Absolutely.
have changed. You might have sold a card or bought a new card to add to your collection, etc. Collectibles insurance allows for you to have an automatic step up every year. It can go up 5 or 10%. Your premium will go up in a commensurate way, but you can certainly have kind of that automatic. I'm always adding to my collection, and or the value of it's hopefully kind of steadily growing over time. You can account for that in your policy and not have to redo it every year. This year I changed mine pretty dramatically, and so I actually got it requoted, like, hey, I want to do this now. I just called them, said,
Yeah.
hey, I want this much now. They gave me a new quote, and I agreed, and they go, all right, we'll send you the stuff. And they did, and it came in the mail.
And
Uh,
not to show for anybody, but since you brought up they cover all different collectibles, a lot of what we're talking about is not card specific. I mean, it's memorabilia.
Correct.
It's your whole collection. It's not just the cardboard.
Now you have to tell them the classification of collectibles that you are covering, which is like, what do you collect? Like, I think it's on the application. Even I did it years and years ago, so I'm gonna try to do this from memory. But I wrote down cards, comics,
I remember I put
jerseys,
memorabilia. Yeah.
memorabilia, exactly. So yeah, it covers it all if you tell them. Now they're not going to cover something you don't tell them about. Oh man, I had this $2 million art collection, and wait a second, we weren't covering that. You didn't disclose that to us, right? I'd rather over disclose than
Yep.
under disclose. People are like, well, I'm going to tell them. No, you want to tell them, because if something happens, they need to know, and it makes it a lot easier. You have to itemize items, individual items over 25,000.
Well, it depends on the policy, I believe.
The collectibles insurance that I use, that's their
Okay.
policy. Just, you're right. There are
Yeah.
multiple places to do that. That happens to be the one that I use. That's what their threshold is for itemizing.
Okay. And there's also collector's policies and dealer policies. So whether you're selling or you're keeping it for yourself, it's worth doing. It's worth, I sleep very well at night because my cards are in the right, protective case, because my cards are not in the basement. And I think that's what we're talking about is, how do we enjoy our cardboard and how do we make sure that we can wake up tomorrow and enjoy it again?
Exactly.
I mean, I just had a grading order pop about an hour ago, and the first thing I'm thinking of is, how's that going to be packed up? How's that going to be shipped? Is everything going to come? Because that's right away is into protecting what we love.
Yeah, no doubt. So let me ask you this final question before we let everybody go. By the way, if you've watched this and we didn't cover a topic that you wanted to hear us talk about, or hell, I wish they would have said more about that, please write a question down below. Danny and I will be checking the comments for multiple days to just see if you guys have any questions, comments, agreements, disagreements. All are fair game. We're happy to hear from you. Would love to do that and hear from you. So my last question for you, Danny, is, if tragedy struck and your entire collection / inventory, all of it, was wiped away by some unforeseen natural disaster or theft or whatever, you get this check from your insurance company. Are you starting over, or are you done?
Having lost my entire collection one time without insurance, I can tell you I would start over before the ink on the check was dry.
Gotcha.
I would be at my LCS so fast. I regret years ago my collection got stolen, and I regretted that I waited as many years as I did to rebuild. So I would start immediately. Now, would I collect the exact same? That's maybe another episode.
That's actually probably a pretty good other episode. Next time you and I are on or something, we need to do, if you had to start over, what would you do? I don't know that I would honestly start over.
I don't know that I could stop myself.
I don't know that I could either, but definitely thought about it. Like, would I start over? And I lean towards no, but I imagine that my emotions would get the better of me, and I would probably do it differently. But definitely, the hobby, it's hard. It doesn't leave your blood. Like, it doesn't. You can't just turn it off. It's not a light switch, right?
Well, I think it's also sports. I mean, I think it's a part of our
Yeah,
love and passion. I mean, I'm on vacation and I've hit two card shops and I'm in a World Baseball Classic game. Barely made the wedding.
love it. Well, thanks, man. This was awesome. Again, we know we just touched the surface on a lot of these things, but hopefully gave you guys at least some food for thought on protecting your collection from start to finish all the way through. Let us know, comments down below. Appreciate it. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, buddy. See you guys later. Keep collecting.